Well, I appreciate you, Jason, for joining us on Stacking Victories here, and looking forward to what you have to share with everybody. The idea behind all this is to get your life story.
Mm.
You talk about how you grew up in a family, what it looked like into school, college, if there's that, and then adulthood, recovery, that whole thing. And while you're telling the stories, to also look back through the process of where did you see God showing up and giving you victory, even if you didn't know it in the moment. The ability of being in recovery is that we can look back and see the hindsight of, oh, this is where God was at, and this is what He was doing. So that's sort
All
of the
right.
process we'll go through as we do this.
Okay.
Um, so if you want to kick off about kind of where you grew up, how you grew up, and
Sure.
your family
Um,
dynamic.
Absolutely. Family dynamic. Let's see. Grew up in Hartford, Connecticut. It's small for a capital city, but it was our home. And I'm kind of the poster child for had the ideal upbringing and still made bad choices. You know, um, you know, uh, very, very, very loving father and mother, very present. Uh, my dad was a pastor, and he worked to support his family. So we didn't see him a lot growing up. He was there. It wasn't like he was, my daddy was definitely there. Um, but he was so busy between church and work that when he was home, he was usually sleeping and whatnot. And some, but no, I had, for all intents and purposes, as ideal and privileged a childhood as I could have. Loving parents, strong family structure, folks stayed together, loved God, taught us to love God and to reach out to Him. And despite that, still making decisions that, showed that inside, without God, I'm kind of messed up. I'm what you would call a PK, pastor's kid. Not that my daddy wasn't a pastor the entire time, but for a good chunk of my life, he was in training and or a pastor. So I definitely was very familiar with God and Christianity and the Bible and the stories and had all the head knowledge. Around 6 years old, we went to a Billy Graham crusade. And I remember this because I remember something connecting enough that I actually made a commitment to accept Christ into my heart at that time. So I understood at least a little bit from that. This wonderful older lady came up and she had like a little book and stuff. She was obviously very good with kids, and helped lead me to the Lord. So I had this. It always made sense to me. God and the God of the Bible, Christ, and I wanted to embrace it and understand it. And this continued from there up into my late teens without too much trouble. Again, very, very genuinely ideal upbringing. My parents were not wealthy in money by any stretch of the imagination, but we had love and care, and our needs were always met, and they were always there. My mom has a gift of common sense and wisdom, and I would go to her frequently for input on things. My poor dad, I went through the phase as a teenager where, of course, I knew more than he did.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it took me a while to get over myself in that area. But he was a good and godly man. He had strong moral positions that he didn't renege on. Like one of the things that I'd heard from other men in the church, just in passing, was that every time I sit there and I start trying to talk bad about someone else, your dad says stop. I don't want to hear it. So, you know, and he loved God with his whole heart, and he recognized where he had failings. And I saw over the course of his life a genuine effort to continue to grow and change and, become the man God would have him be. And I love him so much. I miss him because he passed away a few years back. But um, it's like even the memories that I, in a relatively privileged upbringing, that I could say, there's good memory in those memories because he was there. My daddy was present, Um, he was former Navy, so I did grow up saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, and he taught us to be respectful and polite to our elders. I was only ever disrespectful once to my mom. My dad was the furthest thing from, like, he knew how to punish me, but it was like I can count on just a few fingers the number of times he actually had to like tap on me, like
Okay.
corporal. One of the few times it was actually a wonderful thing because, mom and dad are human. They would fight. And as a teen era, I'd be like, are we going to be okay here? And I got really full of myself one day, and I was extremely disrespectful to my mom. I still don't know how he heard it because there were 3 rooms and 2 closed doors between us and him. And I don't remember yelling. Maybe I was louder than I thought, but I remember hearing him coming down those stairs. Yeah. So it was a wonderful moment for me because while I had, again, like one of the few times in my life where, he gave me a spanking, 16 years old. He lifted me up like I weighed like a piece of paper. Kind of scary, but at the same time, I was like, and he's also saying, don't ever talk to my best friend like that ever again, So it's this wonderful moment for me that's really, I bring it up with people here and there because it's a moment that was fundamental for me. Because I was like, okay, we're secure. I'm safe. My dad loves my mom, And it was something for whatever reason at the time had been eating at me. Are we going to be okay? And that was just like the cement, like, yeah, he's not going anywhere. He loves my mom because, he's taking his own son to significant task for mouthing off to her. I never did that again. But
Okay.
anyway, so, it was around 10, 11, God gave me a natural gift for drawing. And around 10, 11 years old, I would explore that drawing by trying to draw women in various states of undress, having no real clue about physiology. And I'd experience shame, and I'd burn and or bury the papers, And then around 14, genuinely by accident, we were at a local regional weekend conference, hear God's word and whatnot. And we were out and about in the town walking, hit a gas station to get some snacks. And it was a magazine with a bike on it, motorcycles. I liked motorcycles. So I opened it up. Well, there was more than motorcycles on the inside. So I brought up the 10 to 11-year-old stuff because that has been a reminder to me that without God, without me surrendering to him, that underlying nature that wants what I want and does what's unhealthy was still there, even as a young man who had professed to come to Christ already. 14 was a major trigger point because that was genuinely unintentional. but it started a tremendous. It really began in earnest a 24-year issue. Up to that point, I had never engaged in self-love, or you know what I mean. Well, I'm going to use that term for lack of thinking of a better one. And I discovered that at 14. And again, shame, because it was very contrary to what I wanted to believe and who I knew God was, but it felt good. And I liked it. And I liked the high I got from lusting after these images. And it started with magazines. And back in those days, my parents, at some point as a teen, we actually got cable. And back in those days, there would be channels dedicated to lust. At least where I grew up, they'd be like squiggled out.
Right.
Not like the snowflake effect, and not visible. It'd just be like a warped or distorted image. When I discovered them, I would wait till my parents went to bed, and I'd get up and I'd spend hours looking at the darn squiggles, waiting for an image to pop up. Praise God, he never stopped working in my heart or in my life. I did want to understand him better. I wanted to be more than just a PK. I didn't want to just ride my parents' coattails. I wanted a relationship with him. I was baptized at 17, making that commitment, alongside continuing to live in that behavior. I went to seminary, where that behavior followed me.
Well, before we get to that,
Sure.
so growing up, mom, dad, you, any siblings?
Oh, of course, yes. So I consider 4 other siblings. So I have myself and my youngest sister were born to my mom and dad. My older sister was adopted. I also have 2 brothers who were comfortable staying foster brothers. So my parents they had a heart for kids. And when someone truly needed them, they'd stand up and they'd be there. So I had a wonderful opportunity to grow up with 5 siblings, or 4 other siblings. 2 of them, my older sister, who became my sister through adoption, and one of my foster brothers were actually my cousins by blood. It's a really remarkable story to me, because knowing my dad's story of how he came to Christ and seeing his older brother not having come to Christ and seeing the trajectory, without God in my life, it's very possible that my trajectory could have been similar to my cousin's. But because God took hold of my father and worked in him and changed him, we ended up having such a different upbringing that, when my cousins needed rescue, God brought them into my parents' life. So my older brother / cousin, he was comfortable just being a foster child. And he left around 17, 18, to go his own way. We didn't have the best relationship. And I don't remember a lot. I am confident that I encouraged some of that animosity as a younger brother archetype, but we would fight a lot. And I grew to think of him more as a bully than like an older brother / protector, which as an adult really wasn't a fair perspective. But then another young man came into my life. He was originally just my friend, but he's a few years older than me. And he came in, and one overnight turned into 4 years, you know.
Hmm.
I could not have asked God to bring a more brother-like figure into my life than him. He was a protector, in every way that mattered. He was always there. He was such a good brother, and I love him so much. And then there's my older sister, was my cousin, is my older sister, who's, has her own story, but is one of the sweetest, most consistent, and most reliable human beings you'll ever meet. She's the best older sister. She knows just when to tease me versus just when to say, I love you, brother. I don't know why, but at some point she calls me Jose, which is not my name, but it's our thing.
Okay.
I love it because it's from her. And then my younger sister, who's an extraordinary woman, very self-made, an incredible nurse, helps deliver babies, brought up 2 amazing kids that I get to call nephew and niece, So again, my life familially, extraordinarily blessed.
So what's the age difference between everybody?
Well, so my oldest brother is 4 years older. My next brother is 3 years older. My older sister is 2 years older. And then my younger sister is 3 years younger.
Okay.
So there's a good spread.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, I can't look back, and again, very typical familial things. We, as siblings, my older sister and I fought a lot. We put a lot of dents into my poor parents' house, falling into things. So, and even my brother, even my oldest brother, he and I, as I shared, didn't get along. If we'd done something that our parents found out about, though, the one thing we could all rely on is none of us would come clean. Not that that's a good thing,
right?
But we, at least when it was us versus our folks,
You closed ranks.
And it'd be obvious one of you is obviously guilty. My mom would reference that old family circus thing, like, I don't know, and who done it did it. Like
Right.
the little ghost, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Right. So a couple of excerpts from that. We lived in a rental for a period of time with a very narrow hallway, and we were all fairly athletic kids. So we would climb up the wall, hands and feet, and crawl along the top of the ceiling, hands and feet, like Spider-Man. It was a lot of fun. And then one day Mom looked up and was wondering what all those dirty footprints and handprints were. It was a good 9-foot ceiling. So who looks up all the time? But she finally noticed. And of course, I don't know, did it,
Right.
And we'd all done it at some point, pretty much. Maybe not my youngest, but maybe even her. We'll see. But, and then another time, my folks had worked really hard and they finally had a home that they owned. And, the prior owners had this lift that would bring someone from the back door of the kitchen down to the back porch. Because the gentleman who lived in the house before us was in a wheelchair, and that helped him get out of the house.
Okay. All right.
And it had been locked in place and was steady. We were like, well, we want to ride that. So we plugged it in, got it going, rode it up and down a little bit. And then we brought it back down before my folks got home. We're like, we're all set. We didn't put it all the way down. So when my mom stepped on it, it wiggled. She's like, all right, who messed with this? And of course, again, I don't know, was responsible for that. So, again, just to emphasize that when you, at least for me, when I picture the not perfect family, but a typical, reasonably happy upbringing, with siblings you still fight with, but you still have each other's back and stuff. I was extremely blessed to have that.
Good sized family. Seems like you had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. I mean, it was the 90s, so we walked all over the town, biked all over the town. It was very common for us to head out for a few hours, and as long as we got back before dark, before dinner, because we wanted to have dinner with Dad. We would actually tend to eat a bit later, around 8. Sometimes usually between 8 and 9 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Well,
Okay.
because that way it gave him like 5-6 hours of sleep.
Right. Okay.
And then he'd get up and he'd be up for a little while before he'd have to go to work. The man worked the graveyard for decades.
Wow.
Yeah. So, 5 rambunctious teenagers and one poor soul trying to sleep in the middle of the day.
Quite the
I'm sure it
struggle.
was a struggle for him. We did oh my goodness. I don't know. Back then you could fold a piece of paper in a way that when you threw your hand forward, it would make a popping sound.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
My dad had gotten us this big graph paper, like from those old computers that we could draw on and stuff. Well, we got the great idea to make a giant sized version of one of those. And we were small at the time. It took my older sister, myself, and my sister to hold that thing and swing it forward. And when it popped, it sounded like a gunshot.
Wow.
It was loud. It was very, very, very loud. And my poor father comes running out like I got to defend my family in his tidy whities, And my sisters, of course, were the smart ones. He came through the end of the hallway, and the only person standing there with the evidence in hand was me. They were gone. So it was great memories. At the moment, maybe not. In the moment, it was like, oh no, I'm in so much trouble, but looking back on it.
So you talked about the drawing, maybe the exposed drawing type stuff, but I would imagine that is just an aspect of it, because it seems like that's maybe was a hobby you enjoy, art and drawing, and so what other things did you get involved with as far as art type stuff?
I love to draw, so I drew a lot of things. I went through like a superhero phase. So back in the 90s.
Are you DC or Marvel?
Both.
Oh, okay.
So I think most of my drawings landed on Marvel, although I did some DC. We used to have these little trading cards in the 90s, like Marvel trading cards, with Spider-Man and the Hulk and Captain America, all those good guys. So I used to love drawing them and trying to change things up. And, for someone with no training, it wasn't terrible. Try to invent my own after my folks got me like a How to Draw Superheroes book for Christmas one year. So Superman, Batman, things like that. I enjoyed drawing those. Cartoons, cartoonish stuff, inventing my own cartoons. I had a precious friend who was a very gifted artist as well, who had a unique style when he would draw faces. So I learned from him and implemented some of that into my own drawing and stuff when it's just pure cartoony fun. Animals. I enjoy drawing animals and occasionally painting them, although my strength has usually been just a number 2 pencil or different, Back then, that's all I had was number 2. Now I have more, like, okay, you can get a softer pencil, a harder pencil, smudging sticks and all sorts of stuff to really up the ante. But I like drawing animals, still shots of them. Sometimes some fun stuff, families of animals. I when my son was little, I drew him like a whole bunch of raptors jumping off a page and dinosaurs.
So this is a hobby that's carried up to present.
Yeah. I'm not terrible and I'm not great, but I do love doing it. And, I'm I go through phases where it's like, okay, I just want to do this to bless someone else, and then I'll knock out 7, 8, 9 pieces. Then I'll go through a phase of like, oh, the moment it's more a chore than a joy, I hit a lull, and then I don't do it for a little while. But when it's just a joy, and I hope this brings someone a smile. I'm trying my hand at painting. I've done a few, mixed. You can definitely tell Jason hasn't used a painting as a medium or paint, but I have these great paints called gouache. Gouache, I think that's how you pronounce it. You can, depending on what you do with them and what water you add, you can treat them almost like watercolors, or you can treat them more like acrylics.
Oh, okay.
I love them, actually. They're so fun to work with. And you can see, like, from some of the paintings I've done, like, oh, okay, he's definitely never done this before. Versus, okay, he's had a few shots at this, so it doesn't look as bad, But again, like, if I'm doing something like, you know what, money's tight, you know what I can do? I can paint someone something for Christmas, or things like that.
Right. Okay.
So it's meaningful. I try to spend several hours on it, so it's not just like here, but like pour as much as I can into it, much of myself, so it's a meaningful gift. But I've always enjoyed drawing. I used to the school we went to didn't really have a mascot, and this was just something I had fun doing. I created a mascot for the school in my own, like, it was like this bee, this little bee, like, kind of with, acting like, a mafia dude with moxie. I don't know. All sorts of stuff, I remember that because at least my then 14-year-old brain was quite happy with the result. But drawing in general is a wonderful tool for me in terms of a hobby.
Any other hobbies, or you mentioned about being athletic? Did you play any sports in school?
The sports era was like Little League back then.
Okay.
I played in a children's league soccer, children's league baseball for a few years. The athleticism within our family wasn't like in organized sports so much as more jungle gym style.
Okay.
Climbing, lots of things. I love climbing. I really should get back into it because I've lost some of my gripping strength. But that's a lot of fun. I enjoy heights. I don't struggle too much with heights.
Okay.
So yeah. But most of my family, generally, that's where we landed. We did some of those little league stuff as children, but athletically, more like my sisters are more into running or gym. My brothers and I would have been more into all right, hell, I bet you can't climb that, sort of, you're right. And getting into that sort of thing. So athletic in the sense that we had a lot of fun doing very normal backyard / park things. And we were fortunate to live next to a couple of parks over the course of our childhood. So we would use the jungle gyms and in one park, the trees and an actual little cliffside to our advantage.
So how were you as a student in school?
Pretty good. I was always reasonably capable at academics. Kindergarten through third grade, we were in a little town, New Britain, went to school there. I don't remember having any issues. I think I scored and graded pretty well. We would take what was called the California Achievement Tests back then at the end of the year, and I was always at least slightly above average.
Okay.
But the interesting thing, I must have been in my own little world at some point because I found out as an adult that teachers had a concern that I wasn't reading well. And I'm going back in my mind, I'm like, wait a second, I read all those books. And I would smuggle the books home and I'd read through them, even in kindergarten. And then we'd come back, and when it was time for, get in the circle and do your reading and stuff, because I'd already done it, I'd be bored to tears. And
Okay.
and doing other things besides focusing and paying attention. So I think that's where that one got started. But no, I've loved reading. By third grade, fourth grade, I was reading sizable, several hundred-page books. In fourth grade, I read Corey ten Boom's book about the her journey and the people her family hid in the house and stuff. So, I had like series of like Encyclopedia Browns and some other series back in the day that I read voraciously over and over and over again. The Chronicles of Narnia, dug those. Was too young at the time, I think, to get into like Tolkien, but it was like my parents could not punish me by sending me to my room because I had all my books there, and I'm perfectly happy staying in my room and jumping into some world from my bookshelf. So they would usually confine me to the middle of a room on a chair with nothing to do but sit there.
Okay.
So when I actually had to be punished for something.
Right.
So fourth grade, similar thing. We'd moved to Hartford. I think, again, my mom would be the ultimate resource for that, but I don't remember any issues. They moved, our church started a Christian school, for better or worse. I think I fell a bit behind at that point. Granted, these were a lot of volunteers, well-meaning people with no real skills at teaching.
Oh, okay.
And it was a different format. Instead of a classroom format, it was like a wide open scale, and you self-learned through what they called like life packs. And there were 10 or 12 each year, and you'd have to get through all 12, and then you'd have completed the year in that grade. But that school kind of fell apart, and then we spent a couple of years in another school that was using the same method. It was a very interesting thing. I came from a church that was very grace, grace, grace. The irony during the 2 years I was in that first Christian school was, I think out of every 180, so 360 school days, I had 6 days without detention. Right?
6 days without detention.
Without detention. And again, well-meaning folks. But it was really, really rigid, and you could get demerits for some of the silliest stuff.
So like super legalistic type stuff.
It was weird coming from a church that was very much grace first, but the school, hyper legalistic. But so then we went to this Southern Baptist style church for the school there, and they had remarkable grace. And out of 2 years there, I had less than 6 days detention. So, take that as it's always been an interesting paradox in my head.
No.
The more legalistic church, much more grace-filled school.
Right.
The grace-filled church, extremely legalistic school. Go figure. But actually, I did really, really well there. I was constantly getting the highest honors, and I'd be so far ahead in my work that you could earn privileges for some extra breaks and stuff. So I was getting those all the time. By the time I left that school, I was actually nearly a year ahead. So our church attempted a new school at that juncture. They switched to a different curriculum, but they made us test 2 grades back from where we were supposed to go back in. And anything that the test said and again, different curriculums, yeah? So there's very, very likely this curriculum might hit some points that one didn't. So the end result was that I, at least for me, I can only speak for me, I ended up having to take several things as far back as 7th grade over again. So my first year in that school, I basically said, I don't care. And I did almost nothing for the first year. And I played the part, and I played the game, and flew under the radar. And I was really a teenager, but I was really angry that I went from being ahead to being almost 2 years behind in a lot of subjects. because of the way they went about the testing. Second year, and I was like, okay, that was a dumb idea. So I started taking it more seriously. The end result is I actually spent 5 years in high school instead of 4. Because I really did that first year, that 9th grade year. I just said, no, I'm done. Not, obviously hindsight being what it was, I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
And that was on me. That was my choice. I decided to have a pity party because I didn't like how the school decided to run things. And, my poor folks. Anyway, they had to put up with me for an extra year because of that. Anyway. So no, but I graduated reasonably well, at least above a 3.0 grade average. Not Mr. Brilliant, but capable. I could do basic geometry, algebra, loved algebra actually, thrived in algebra, English, history, science, all that stuff at the high school level. Never attempted calculus though. Calculus is a language my brain refuses to comprehend. My son, on the other hand, has the gene. It went like my dad, definitely, mathematically brilliant. So it just kind of skipped me, like, but my son has it. So I'm like, all right. So my son, very capable at all the higher math. Me, I tapped out at basic geometry. Not tapped out like gave up, but after the theorems and the basic understandings and the basic stuff for geometry, my brain was just like, huh? So, oh, but all things considered, and then I went on to seminary from there, and I'm the type of person that unfortunately in my past was very much like learn the hard way. I'd have all the examples up front. Hey, why not do it don't do it that way because here's some results and I could do it better. And I do it that way and oh look, here's the result. Not so good. So my first semester at seminary. After that first semester, got called into the dean's office. Do you want to be here? Of course. These grades say you don't,
Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's seminary, so it's not like I'm out all night partying, but instead of doing my work, I'm on my computer, engaging in other things. And sometimes playing a game, most often doing, engaging in lust as a seminary student. But I took that to heart. He gave me some grace. He says, you got one more semester to make, to turn this around, which I did. At that juncture, from that point on, all my grades were A or B's with 1 D. And I'm okay with that D because it was Hebrew. And Hebrew was just like calculus to me. Okay. I worked very hard for that D. So I'm like, all right, it's good, And I'm sure my professor gave me some grace as well. It's just such a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
When you approach written language. And yeah, I struggled with that one.
So now was the intention always going into seminary to come out and become a pastor or something in theology or?
No, I honestly, I went in saying, okay, 17, baptized, committed to this. I want to understand and know. I want to understand what I believe. Okay. Why I say I believe it, which is fine, but I want to understand it better. That was the whole goal. It's just a basic biblical studies bachelor's, I did tickle Christian education for a while. I ended up stepping away from that, which I think was a good choice for me. I would not make a very good teacher. I lack the patience that the good teachers tend to possess. So no, just that was it. Like it was a genuine degree. Worked hard for it after that first semester. But no, I was like, all right, if I'm going to embrace this, I'd better understand it. And if I have any issues, take care of it now. So that's why I went through with it.
So seminaries, there's dedicated universities or colleges, that is you're going to seminary, and it's just all theology and the Bible and learning all of that. And then there's like, I guess, Bible colleges that you go to, and it, sort of the traditional looking university or college, with the the Bible aspect to it. So you can come out of there with like I guess, a divinity, or bachelor's in divinity or something like that. So, and am I explaining that right? Or
Oh, absolutely.
okay,
So it was a Bible college and seminary.
okay,
Maryland Bible College and Seminary, actually. I think it's probably still going down in Baltimore.
okay,
It's a Baltimore institution. It's not like a formal university setting. It's very much something that was created by the denomination affiliated with it, which I think is Greater Grace. Greater Grace. So they created Maryland Bible College and Seminary, and it was, at least when I was going to it, it was running strong and stuff, had a sizable international student group as well as domestic. But it was really very Bible focused, very Bible centric. So, and so there wasn't like your typical university. I believe they can definitely give bachelors. I'm certain they can give masters, and for this, I don't know everything, and that's a couple decades back, but I at least know that they gave honorary doctorates of divinity
okay,
to some people with significant, backgrounds that would come to speak and whatnot for like commencement.
right. So, grew up in Connecticut,
Yes.
ended up in a
Yeah.
Maryland Bible College.
Well, the church I grew up in was affiliated.
Okay,
So I use the word denomination, which honestly, to me, in many ways, Greater Grace functions denominationally, but they call it an affiliation.
okay,
The binds between what I would call the headquarters versus the other churches. Those churches have potentially a lot more leeway, a lot more freedom to make their own decisions. Like before headquarters would ever step in, so to speak. And I'm sure there's a better way to put it than headquarters.
right,
I just can't think of one. So I grew up, we were affiliated, so it was kind of considered natural at that juncture too. Oh, you're going to go to college? Do you want to do seminary? If you're going to go to seminary, you might as well go down to the one we're affiliated with, And it worked out for me. Not for everybody.
okay,
It's not everyone's cup of tea.
all right.
But yeah. And they took me, I filled out my application and stuff. They said, sure, come on in. So I was grateful for that.
So, bachelor's from there.
Bachelor's from there.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
And then stayed in the area.
Yeah. Stayed in the area in year 3. Well, in year 2, really, I met the wonderful person who would become my wife. And she graduated at the end of my year 3. And we got married that summer, and we decided to make a life together. And at least for that era, that time, it was Maryland. And then, and we stayed in Maryland, I want to say 2007, if I recall correctly. So we were married in 2000. In 2007, we moved over to Pennsylvania. Our family was growing, and I wanted to model. I had a desire to model kind of a generational household to my children. And her parents, both of their kids, she was here in the United States and her brother was in Canada. And they were like, hey, we'd like to come over and actually, be with our core family. So they came to live with us. So in 2007, my oldest was with us, and but then we were expecting my son. He was on his way. And we were going to go from a family of 3 to a family of 6.
Okay.
So we were like, all right, let's look for a place. And this was also just before the 2008 housing market crash. So things were awfully expensive, unnaturally so. We couldn't find anything within our budget here in Maryland, and we looked. So we started looking just over the border in Pennsylvania, and we found a functional place not too far over the border for a lot less than, and honestly, at least for the time, also a little bit more land, because I liked the idea of having a place where I could send the kids out to play or go out to play with them. And I wouldn't have to be overly concerned about traffic or other issues in the area. So God was very good and very gracious, and we found a wonderful place.
So, and all that is wonderful stuff. I want to go back to how you guys met and kind of what that process looked like for you.
So we met in college. She was here on a student visa, and so she was required to do some work around and whatnot. The first time I saw her, she was in the library, functioning, I guess, essentially as a librarian. She's a beautiful person, and I kind of fell for her. It took me ages to get up the guts to ask her out, and even when I did that, I found out that what I wanted to take her to was the same day as her birthday, so I kind of hedged and said, as friends for your birthday. And then I was in this interesting place of like, I know I'm a geek, she's really pretty. She's way outside. I'm like, okay, I'm a 5 and I'm trying to convince a 10 to fall for me, I kind of backed off a bit because I was like, I don't want to make this weird or whatnot, which ironically was the wrong decision. So about a month after that, a mutual friend came up to me and said, "Hey, Jason, what's your problem?" I'm like, "No, nothing, man. What's up? Good to see you." He's like, and he didn't mince any words. He didn't even have to. He says, "She likes you and you're blowing it." Like, what do you mean? Like playing dumb. He was like, "You haven't talked to her for a month. She thinks you hate her." I'm like, "Oh, was I supposed to do that?" Because it's a stupid 20-year-old. But no, so, I found her, connected with her, started talking, asked her out on another date, and, took her on that date. My parents were away. We were in my dad's car, went for a nice dinner, had a coupon, to a nice place. I don't think they exist anymore. They used to be over in the Hunt Valley area. They were connected to an old hotel out there. And then I was going to take her to see a movie just a little further north in Hunt Valley. And to this day, I cannot understand it. But I was merging onto the highway, and this big old 18-wheeler was coming. And I don't know why I couldn't seem to stay inside the white line. So when I came up, the nose of the car was underneath this 18-wheeler.
Oh.
Wheels in front, wheels on the back.
Yeah.
And it was deep enough from my memory, for all intents and purposes, those wheels should have gone right over us. Instead, the car flips sideways and bounces out and away. So, and the side, my side of the car is basically just, it looks like wrinkled foil, and there's a little smoke coming from the engine, but we're not dead. So I'm like,
wow.
My parents trusted me with the car for the first time. And I did that. And first real date with this person, and I nearly killed us. And, I'm walking around outside. I'm looking at stuff and I'm walking back and forth. She's sitting in the car, probably like, thinking about life's choices, going out with this American. But I walked up to her and says, "Okay, did I just blow it or do I still have a chance?" And she said, "Yeah, you still have a chance."
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I was like, "Okay, don't blow this."
So this was after that month of not talking.
Oh yeah. Right.
Okay.
Because I was like, okay, so let me be serious here. And, I was like, okay, she likes me. She must. So we had a very cool group of friends. So almost certainly she told one of her friends who's also friends, and she probably communicated to this other friend, a guy friend, who she knew I would respond.
Right.
So, but he's also he's a very down to earth dude, very awesome. I love him with my whole heart. Don't get to see him much anymore. But yeah, him just being able to come up, hey Jason, hey, what's up? You're being stupid. She likes you and you're blowing it. Like, So no, that to me was pretty clear evidence that I had room to potentially pursue her.
Okay.
So, and again, regretfully during that time, trying to be a follower of Christ, trying to be a good person pursuing this woman with honor and integrity, and still engaged in a pattern of lust. So, we dated for a year before we got married. We practiced, the church was big on no touch love. I held her hand for the first time like 3 days before we got married. First kiss was very awkward because it was when we got married, the day of. And that's fine. Like, no big deals. I have no regrets. But again, it was also part of my facade, if I can dip in very quickly. Here's Jason. He's doing good things. He's morally upright. He's a good person. He's taking care of his fiance. Which was genuinely a part of what I wanted to do, but was glossing over and covering my addiction, which was absolutely full blown. So we dated for a year. I had asked her, I think it was August. It was a Thursday. No, it was a Sunday in early August, right after that first date, when I realized she still was giving me a chance. We were sitting in the backyard of the house my folks were renting, and I asked her if she wanted to go steady, and she said yes. So, and we'd go to school together. We'd come back. I'd drive her home. We'd spend hours talking outside her dorm in the car, before saying goodnight, and I was sharing with her all the things I wanted to be in Christ while covering up that part of me and not sharing that part of me. So it obviously very, very much misleading her. She was getting the man who wanted to be all these things and spoke all the right things about being a godly man, a godly husband, someone who follows after Christ, who prays consistently, who's involved in taking care of her and being a godly force in the home, and versus the man underneath, who was the more real me. That had she known, I'm sure she would have run in terror.
So during the whole time that year of dating and leading into marriage, definitely looking at porn, the self-love, masturbation, whatever you want to call it.
I white knuckled a lot.
Okay.
So I could go weeks, but then I'd binge.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd go weeks, sometimes months, and then I'd binge. It was consistent. It was a consistent practice at that juncture for at least 4 years. And this is 2021, so I have been pretty much fully addicted for at least 6.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say once I hit 15, I was fully addicted.
Leading up to the marriage,
Yeah.
Any sexual experience with any other women, or this was the first time?
That was my first time,
Okay.
and that was one of the ways I lied to myself. I'm keeping this pure. I'm
Right.
keeping this holy.
Yeah.
I'm not actually doing anything with anyone for real.
Right.
And glossing over, the truth.
Okay.
But no, I am confident that physically we were each other's first.
Mm-hmm. So how was the first year or two of marriage as far as relationally? Where do things look at as far as the addiction?
Relationally, she was doing everything she could. And I was there and I was present and I wanted to. But within a couple months, I was using again, quietly, discreetly. Um, it was so deeply not okay. And she loved me so well, and she was a wonderful soul. She was a good woman, um, you know, and I think she overlooked a lot, especially in those first few years, because she's figuring things out too. And I presented as well as I could. And I had certain boundaries and things, even in my using. And I would convince myself, this is going to make it okay. But yeah, within 2 months, my whole illusion that now that I have this, I'll be able to stop, I'll be able to let it go. No. That was one of the things. I absolutely loved her with my whole heart, but I also wanted to use her as a means to overcome my addiction. I used her. You know, there
Make her
was
your higher power, and without knowing maybe what
well,
that meant.
I had no clue about that at
Yeah.
the time, but she was going to be how I would stay clean. You know, um, it was I was so deceived. Um, so, first 4 years again, building a life together. We were in a loft apartment for the first year or so. Nice and affordable. We could make it happen. We were not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. You know, we got some steady jobs, which was good within our first year. Then I don't even remember how, but we found ourselves along Route 40 down in Maryland at this place that sold mobile homes. And we ended up purchasing a mobile home that we put over in Edgewood, Maryland, in the Hartford County area. And we built that up and built a life there. Our daughter came in 2004, our oldest, and it's an interesting, my perspective, it can be very odd at times to confront who I was, because I can look back at the time we were together and for me say there were many, many, many good moments. And I'm very grateful for that time, and I'm grateful for her. And what was there? I mean, without her, I wouldn't have the wonderful human beings that I have in my life, my kids. And then to kind of juxtapose that against what I brought in, the secret I brought in, that it's like I said I do, while bringing a form of corruption into our marriage. That was slow acting. I was far too good at hiding it. I knew all the tricks. There were exceptions. There was at least one moment around year 2, year 3, that because she loved me and trusted me, I was able to talk out of, convince her it was a fluke or something else. Like, no, that was a virus or something, And she sacrificed so much, and she gave so much of herself. And as we would go forward, like I got involved, I used to like gaming a lot, if you will. And it was getting even that was getting bad, because instead of spending time with my wife, I was spending time with the game. And I can look back now at those moments when she would come over to me and she'd put her hand here, and kind of rub my neck a little bit. Say, hey, want to spend some time with me? Too many of those times it would basically be the equivalent of not right now, you know? And she was actively working hard to be a part of our marriage and to be engaged in it. And I couldn't be bothered. This is a really remarkable soul. Again, like whatever may be, whatever happens, the very real fact that I wounded her deeply, and she has every legitimate reason in the universe to say to have said I'm done and to cut all ties, which I do not blame her one bit for. But I have, again, I had a wonderful life in that era, in no small part because of her sacrifices, because of everything she did to try and keep our family stable, even while that root of corruption was there because of me. And again, I had the wonderful privilege to raise up 3 beautiful souls because she was a part of my life.
So,
Sorry.
Obviously, no, that's fine. I appreciate that, and with the language used, it sounds like there's no longer that marriage. So, how long did that? How long was the marriage, and at what point? I'm assuming you were found out as far as what you were doing. Or were there other things that led into?
There were other things that led into it.
Okay.
I had always prided myself on keeping it to just that. I know I'm stuck. I want freedom. I don't know how to get freedom. I am terrified if I tell her it will be over. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to get free. So I'll white knuckle and I'll go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months before I collapse again into it. Or I never left it, but that white knuckling,
Right.
It's useless. It doesn't work. At least it didn't work. It was useless for me because it wasn't helping me with the root of the problem. But where were we? What did you ask? I'm sorry. I segued too hard.
Leading up to the ending of the marriage, was it because of the addiction, was there other stuff as well?
2016, spring to summer. There was someone in my office, an attractive person, who I began to engage in an emotional relationship with. Mm-hmm. It was not overbroad, it was not significant, but it was very much there. So in my heart, just the way Jesus says, I had, at least from my perspective, for a time, an emotional affair. Summer of 2016.
Just for some clarification, sure. So was that a known emotional affair from both parties, or was this more what you consider to be that way? And so was that more fantasy, or?
She did flirt back.
Okay. All right.
But from my perspective, once I was confronted with needing to face the reality, mm-hmm. I know I engaged in an emotional affair. Okay. Even if it wasn't reciprocated, which I'm perfectly thankful for.
Okay.
And again, it was not long, but it was there. In the summer of 2016, early summer, we were in Gettysburg, and it was really hot out. And my wife was like, I'm going to get our daughter some water. I don't even remember the circumstances. For whatever reason, I had given my daughter an instruction. She hadn't listened, so I decided I'm going to stand on this hill. I was like, no. And my wife very justifiably said, it's too hot out. I'm getting her water. And I cannot explain it or understand it to this day. But in that moment, I said, I really hate you right now. I had never used that word before, and I have been very, very careful never to use it since. But something fundamentally shifted in that moment for her, indisputably. I repented. I apologized. We went on to we went on to a family vacation, wonderful memories there and stuff, at least for me. But obviously something shifted for her, because little by little by little, come September, I was talking maybe marital therapy. She wasn't keen on that. She was trying to find her own way through things. She was beginning to question stuff, I think. And at that juncture, I began to seek actual help for myself and my addiction through a Christian therapist in the area. And it was an interesting thing as I was beginning to confront those demons. It was like, okay, I ran up against this. Do I tell her? Because one of the things was no more lying, right? Be honest. And there was this real fundamental argument in my head about, will I be doing this for myself? Like at some point, whatever happens, she's going to have to know. How do I go about this? Right? In a way that I don't know. I don't know how I could even fathom, like, in a way that does less damage. Because, so we had a date in October. Things were going well from my perspective. I was trying to reconnect. I was trying to, I'd put aside that emotional thing. I was getting help with the addiction. I was, every day was a victory kind of thing, but it was being done in a different way now. It wasn't being done white knuckle.
Okay.
But I had not yet stepped into recovery deliberately in that regard. It was just a very baby area. We had a date at the end of October. We drove up in November to spend Thanksgiving with my family, and she was very distant. And when I reached over to hold her hand, she pulled away, and it was very scary. I remember talking to her side a little bit when we were finally there, and she said, I just feel like we're islands drifting apart. And I asked her what I could do to help bring us back together. She says, I don't know. Have you ever heard the story of the little Danish boy in the dike?
No.
So the story is like, Holland has dikes around because it's low and water would fill everything in without these dikes. And it talks about this little hole in the dike. So he puts his finger in the hole to stop the water from coming in. But then another one forms. Before you know it, he's run out of fingers and toes, and more is coming. It was like that.
Okay.
I couldn't keep the holes plugged. I couldn't stop them. It just kept getting worse and worse because she's doing her own internal inventory now, and she's coming to some honest conclusions, And I did love her very much, but my attitude and my presentation, the corruption I brought into the marriage, sure didn't show her that. So she was convinced I was loyal. I don't think that was ever in dispute, but that I didn't love her. By December of 2016, she was actively looking for reasons to move on. She would share things. We carpooled together because we both worked for the same place. And things would be brought up during the car thing. And my plea would be, I want this to work. I want us, and again, have not yet told her about what I'm working on and that addiction. And she'd bring up some things. I don't know her heart. This is only from my perspective. It appeared to me at the time that she was trying to find a way to convince me that we should be separated, that we should call it quits. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to. So week by week, the auntie would kind of get upped and she would say something else, I think in a hope of me saying, okay, yeah, fine, let's call it quits. And then early January 2017, she said, around our second, third year of being married, I saw this and I let it go. And at that juncture, I was like, okay, I felt like, what am I going to do? I can't keep living in a lie. So for a few moments, I remember trying to think about it. So what I said is, that is something I have struggled with for 24 years. Well, she's extremely good at math.
Mm-hmm.
That means our entire 16-year marriage, and that was all and she was like, okay, yeah. And again, not knowing her heart, she's, or where she was, she had been wounded. She knew she was wounded. She's been doing all this. Again, this is from my outside perspective.
Okay.
She's been doing all this self-inventory, and things are getting much and much worse in our relationship as she's putting two and two together. And now I've essentially admitted that for our entire marriage, I have struggled with that, with porn, without ever saying the word, but,
Mm-hmm.
And she's fully justified in saying I'm done. I think it was, that was a Thursday, and Saturday she handed me her rings and, said I'm done. And she was, I had hurt her so terribly. And it kind of, I think for her finally was like, okay, I've been trying to add all these things up. Why isn't this making sense? Why isn't this making sense? And I gave, and I admitted the answer. So for her, I can only imagine. She shared at one point during that process, it was, I think, April of 2017. She was at the top of the stairs. I was at the bottom. I had to get the oil changed on my way out. She says, you made me feel like garbage. I had no response to that. Doesn't matter if I didn't mean to or I didn't want to make her feel that way.
Right.
I brought this corruption into our marriage from the beginning, never told her about it, never came clean, never sought real help. And I'd polluted our entire life together with it. So, it was also in that time frame where I began to understand that the English where it says, where it emphasizes in the New Testament, forgive me for not recalling the exact verse, that it's essentially divorce, while not preferred by God, is acceptable for adultery.
Mm-hmm.
The actual Greek is unrepentant sexual sin.
Mm.
It's been Englishified to just adultery.
Right.
And I had to face the reality that I had lived in unrepentant sexual sin for 24 years, because up to that point, it was like, it's not like I wanted, I hoped for some form of reconciliation during that time, but I needed to understand. And it took a while because I'm so hard-headed. To whatever degree I could, because I'm not her, I couldn't possibly fully understand because I'm not in her heart or in her thoughts, but to the best of what God could help me understand how I had harmed her and hurt her by bringing that in and keeping it that way. And that, I had no legs to stand on here. If she was done, she was done, and that was okay.
Where things were at as far as the the marriage and things coming to an end, and then some thoughts or fears that your wife was having.
So I had when I realized that she was done. I had talked with someone to help me navigate that process, and their encouragement was like, "Don't just move out." I was like, "Really?" So And they said that at least here in Pennsylvania at the time, the court could often look at whichever parent left as willful abandonment,
Okay.
and that it could cause, if I wanted to be in the children's lives, it could cause issues. So I said, okay. I let her know that I moved downstairs to our guest bedroom, and I was staying in there. She moved back into our bedroom. She had been sleeping with our youngest for many months at that juncture. But she, excuse me, no. I let her know that I was going to be staying, and I tried to give her as much space as possible, but I was still there, which she really didn't like or didn't want. In the process of that, with everything she must have been feeling, the betrayal, the hurt and the pain that she was undergoing, she may have become fearful for especially our oldest. And we had conversations to that regard, and I assured her that, that had not been the case and would never be the case. And she acknowledged that, but I think that fear still kind of may have played a part. So, sometime in March of 2017, our daughter's school was told about these concerns, and they are mandatory reporters. So they did their job. Honestly, at this juncture, I was not aware of what was happening behind the scenes in that regard. So this is not by my memory. Both my oldest daughter, and my son began seeing someone in the school, and then my daughter was seen by someone at Child Protective Services from York. I wasn't using my computer. I had stopped using it completely. I was done. The hard drive was taken out and given to the police to try and, see if there was anything on there that was illegal, which there was not. I was served on May 1st, 2017, by a gentleman who I think enjoys his job. Had quite a grin on my face. He says, "You've been served." And it was the divorce papers. It was an interesting thing, the divorce suit. It included, and again, for the first time I was seeing this, all these allegations and things and claims regarding child protection concerns, including claims about there being a safety plan and other things that had never actually taken place. So I was not particularly keen on the attorney she chose. I felt that attorney was willing to be unscrupulous to get the job done. But neither here nor there. I contacted an attorney at that juncture. I had a little bit up front that I gave to them. He came with me. I also contacted CPS multiple times. I was trying to be very open. Hey, I just heard about this. Who do I need to see? What do I need to do? Whatever you guys tell me, I'll do. They had me go in on May 9th, 2017 for a consult with the CPS worker who'd been working with Naomi. Over the course of that, the worker acknowledged that what had been claimed in the suit was not accurate, and that the accusations that were made to justify CPS involvement were unfounded. So, I was okay. This is good. I'm thinking, all right, this is a positive development. I'll be able to stay with my kids and be a part of their life. Um, I asked the CPS worker, what can be done about the inaccurate claims in the suit, and she indicated that they would be unable to make any changes. They just didn't have enough staff. And then I asked her about a letter to emphasize that the accusations were not founded. I had a first meeting at a courthouse on in the late teens of May. I want to say 18th or 19th. I guess a preliminary hearing or whatever it would be called. Forgive me. It was 10 years ago. It's hard to remember. Mm-hmm. But could we have a letter from you that says, okay, no, we've all this unfounded. And the CPS worker, from my perspective at the time, was, like, no, I really don't have the time. We can't do that. I'm like, well, this is kind of important. I could lose my children. So my attorney said, well, okay, if we can't have the letter, I'm going to subpoena you and have you come, and you can share it then. I don't regret that call. I think it was the right thing to do in terms of, like, you've shared that you believe I'm innocent, and we'd like you to say that. Mm-hmm. When we got there on that day, she changed what she said to the judge. And she told the judge, we are afraid the father may be grooming his daughter. And family court is family court. Judges kind of, I think they give proper, thought to what CPS has done. And the judge felt like his hands were tied, said, okay, that's what we're going to go with. And he put down a protection order that meant I could no longer be with the kids alone. And I would have to work out visitation and figure all those things out. That was probably one of the most heartbreaking and devastating moments of my life after the day my wife had said, I'm done. I was pretty much a mess. Absolutely a mess. I got back into the car, I'd helped myself together, and I just collapsed into tears and wailing because I didn't know what to do. I certainly felt betrayed by that individual from CPS. I was upset with the kid's mom and all these other things. And again, let me reiterate, like, I can appreciate, especially from this distance, from that time, considering how I had betrayed her using pornography and everything she had to deal with in terms of I can't imagine how she felt. I can appreciate and understand where that fear came from and her desire to protect. Yeah. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Right.
So that beginning the process of, like, okay, I need to begin to show that wherever I can, if the court says jump, I ask how high. If CPS says do this, I say I do exactly what they say. But CPS never contacted me again. I bumped into that same person once on my way out of the door at the old house where we used to live together. She was coming in for a checkup on my daughter, and that was it. I got a letter in the mail not that long after saying they had found things validated. When CPS uses validation, it's a very interesting thing to do. It doesn't actually say you're guilty of anything. It doesn't make any claims, but it means that it lasts 5 years. You're not allowed to be around your own kids. It does not stop you from being around any other children. It's only that immediate thing. And you cannot contest it. There's no avenue or means to object, contest, or to challenge. At the time, it was, obviously I was not happy with the CPS worker. I felt that she had, probably angry at being subpoenaed. Again, this is my thought at the time, was like, she, she decided to change what she was going to say. I don't know. You know what? Maybe you would get rid of that. I don't know. Because, I'm making assumptions now.
Mm-hmm.
So this validation letter, it's kind of like, it's a red mark. It lasts 5 years, but it would not preclude me from anything. All my checks, everything else would come back clean. I don't understand why they have it, other than to kind of, as a stopgap, just to say, okay, with this family, we're going to put this in place. But it doesn't really protect anybody. It does hurt. If you're innocent, it certainly hurts the person being hit with the validated label. It can, but if for someone who isn't, if they use that technique, it doesn't necessarily protect anyone outside of the immediate family.
So for 5 years, you couldn't see your kids at all, or you only,
For
you couldn't be alone with them?
no. So that letter stays on my record for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Separately from that, I was able to, so I went and had a psych eval, multiple tests, MCII, MAXI, multiple things. I went to a psychiatrist, psychologist fella who was respected by the courts, had all of his stuff in a row, multiple things. Just say, all right, is there a there? I never hurt my kids. I don't want to hurt my kids. I never, I've never done, but okay, I need these things anyway to show that I'm not a harm to my children. And, God, if there's something there, let's uncover it, and I was in a place right then where I was almost daily going back to, I have not given you a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. And it became very foundational to my survival day to day, because I had lost my children, I lost my family, I had no connections. I was building very gradually because of my own stubbornness, connections in recovery, but those were slow moving because of me. And I had lost everything. So fear was a really powerful enemy. So I was hanging on to that, like, all right, the spirit of power, not my own power, not for sure, but God's capacity to take the anguish and pain and grief I had and help me through it, to give me and I cried more tears in a 7-month span than I'd ever done before or since. I would go to church with a box of tissues because even once the song started, I was gone,
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of that, leaning into him, because he was all I had. I had nothing else. My reputation was gone. My children were gone. My family was gone. I was living, a church was very graciously allowing me to pay a little rent and live in a room over in York City. I had nothing, so and my father-in-law, for a period of time, very graciously allowed me to see my children with him. That didn't last too long, which I understand. Just the family dynamics being what they were. But I'm always forever grateful to him for that. I did make 2 very key, wonderful friends that I had, but we reconnected because a man I consider a brother, and another gentleman who became like a brother to me, who sacrificed and gave many hours so the kids and I could have time together under a supervision order.
I'm curious, the church that you were renting the room from,
Yeah.
how long did you live there?
3 months.
Oh, okay.
The church had said certain things would be possible, that ended up not being possible. It wasn't just me. It was not conducive to being able to show the court I have a place that my kids can call, their own. that's just us. So I had to make some changes.
Okay.
So I spoke with the pastor there. He was very gracious. He understood, and I found a place over in Yo,
Okay.
a nice little apartment, two bedrooms, one for the girls, one for my son, and I had a day bed in the living room. You know, but it was sufficient. We had a bathroom, we had a living room, we had a kitchen, we had bedrooms. You know, so I started making that into a home. So it was about 4 months. And then an interesting feature of this is I still don't know to this day. I got connected at Grace. I had started coming to Grace, and people were coming out of the woodwork. Grace is a wonderful church. It's still possible because of its size. If you really want to get lost on the periphery, you can. But God wasn't having any of that. He was bringing people at me left, right, and center. Gentlemen in recovery who listened on a February night in sub-zero temperatures while I wailed and grieved and complained. And then once I was done, the oldest gentleman, someone who's become like a father to me, was like, "Are you done?" All right, but he let me get it all out, and he very graciously redirected me back towards this is good. You cannot do this for anyone else. It has to be what you want, what you need for you. And his wisdom was foundational in helping me on my road to recovery. That's when I began. I was serious, but I had the wrong impression about 12 steps up to that point. And that's when I began to take it more seriously.
So what year was this when you entered into recovery?
Formally, February 2017. I had lost my kids. I didn't have them. I was very, very broken. I didn't know how I was ever going to get put back together in a million pieces. Never like to a point of taking my own life, but extremely broken. And I had no idea how I was going to be ever be repaired. But I knew God was there during those deepest, most painful moments of grief. At the end of those moments, there would be peace that I couldn't explain. It was really, really taxing on me physically. I dropped like 70 pounds. My family was kind of scared. They were like, "What's wrong?" I don't know. The stress can really, really do a number on your body. But so he gave me power and love, obviously. There I was, most unlovable person on the planet. Finally, he had been so patient for so many years, and he finally just kind of lifted whatever he lifted, and he allowed the full weight of the consequences to hit me, because I hadn't learned any other way. I had 24 years before that to figure it out,
Right.
So, but in the midst of that, while he was allowing me to be fully disciplined and fully experience those consequences for my bad choices, he was there. He was. I picture him like bottling my tears, giving me peace at the end of those moments, those horrible times, and a peace I can't explain. Not like it's all going to be okay, but it's like he's here with me, kind of thing. I'm not alone. And that sense of love. Okay, he's loving me this much. And there were tangible things that came through that made it very obvious. That church that let me stay in that place for a few months. When I finally got the apartment, I had a couch that a couple of friends had brought to me. I had nothing else. I had made no calls. I had not told anybody. Over the course of about 2 weeks after moving in, strangers were showing up at my door from various ministries all over York County with odds and ends. "Hey, we heard you need help. We have some chairs. Hey, we heard you need help. We have a table. Could use some dishes. Could use some silverware." Like,
Wow.
to this day, my home is a mishmash of the wildest things. None of it matches, but it's such a profound example of God taking care of me. And he brought, I had Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Baptists, Reformists, Grace, you name it, easily people from at least 8 different ministries, different churches. So it also helped. He also, in the moment, also helped me see the ecumenical body of Christ. outside of the little disagreements that we decided to create our own denominations on. I
Right.
got to experience this beautiful, wider body of Christ. And again, I don't know who said what to whom or where. So if that isn't God taking care of me, I don't know. So for me, that was like, okay, all right, Lord, if I had any doubts, So here he is. He's loving on me. He's getting me through this. He's put me in connection. I developed a wonderful relationship with an uncle of mine who's a beautiful believer in Christ, who would call me to encourage me every week. And he would spend a couple hours with me on the phone at a time with ease, just lifting me up and praying for me and talking with me. My daddy, my mom, you came into my life not that long afterwards. Chris, the older gentleman I spoke about earlier, and Dan Bones, the doc. Uh, and just like, honestly, like, interestingly, the way I connect, it was Dan, Chris, and you that I felt the most like, okay, these are men that I want to engage with and spend time with and learn from and receive from. And, you know, the three of you were not afraid to hold me accountable. I said, please do. And you said, okay, and I loved that. I needed that. I really, I needed that. So he's filling my life up with these things. I had to, that one psych eval wasn't enough. So the court ordered another one. We went through that. And so little by little, even while I could look at certain things and find reasons to complain at each level, the ability to look back and see God's steps. That, right? I'm a light unto your feet. I'm a lamp unto, or a light under your path and a lamp unto your feet. That whole idea of like, I've got this. You've got to trust me. I'm not going to show you the end game. That's not yours to know. Mm-hmm. But you see this? This is what you have to deal with today. I'm here. We'll get through this, and taking it one step at a time. And now being able to look back and see how deeply involved he was. Whew. So in like those moments, there was stuff in that second eval I obviously didn't care for. Things the eval, they got some paper shifted around in the wrong folders and stuff, and yeah, it was very easy to complain, but with each step though too, God was like, okay, you've shown this. You're not a danger to your children. They know this now. Now we're going to give some grace to someone else who needs time to understand that. Mm-hmm. So no, you're not going to get your kids right away. But guess what? Now you don't need someone to be there to watch anymore. So a couple of years in, took a couple of years. But a couple of years in, one night I picked up the kids and I was able to share, like, guess what, guys? We still have work to do, but I can come and spend time with you now. You can come over to the apartment, which they couldn't do without a supervisor.
Okay.
And we can be together. And my oldest broke into tears. For a long time, it's like, as a parent, like, my responsibilities to them, to reassure them, none of this is your fault. There is none of this. This is on Dad. This is on me. Don't blame yourself. Don't blame yourself. And from the eyes of a child, because she had been utilized to help create the circumstance that led to the supervision issues and the separation, 2 years she blamed herself. She thought it was her fault.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I didn't know what to do with that other than just keep loving on her and reassuring her, baby, no. And not casting blame anywhere else either. Trying really hard not to. I'm human. I've never done that perfectly. But the goal to be like, right now, what she needs to know is none of that was your fault. Your dad's the one who made choices that put everybody in a position where that took place, None of that was you.
Time-wise, just to,
Sure.
I guess, get it straight in my
sure.
head. So earlier on, you were talking about, I guess, you intentionally seeking out, a therapist, counselor, somebody to help you with. So when did that start?
So that started late September 2016.
Okay. And then February
Recovery.
2017, you enter in recovery.
Oh,
March or May, you say something as far as you've been dealing with this for 24 years to your
no.
wife.
I'm sorry. That was January 3rd, 2017.
Okay.
That was preemptively where she's like, okay, I'm done.
Okay.
Because it's clear you brought this poison into our marriage, you know. Um, so all this was happening concurrently. And then March is where the school was informed, we think dad's dangerous.
Okay.
School has to report, CPS to do their thing. Everybody has jobs to do to
Right.
protect the kids, right? So by May is when I get served,
The divorce papers.
the divorce
Okay.
papers. And then the 18th or 19th, we have that first thing. CPS changes their story.
Right.
I lose the children.
Okay.
That's May 18th, 19th, 2017.
So then, how long from being served divorce papers was the divorce finalized?
2.5 years.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think that was the one thing. Because the other attorney decided to utilize those claims to try and force things, it created a circumstance where we were technically married until January 6, 2020.
Okay.
But we'd been separated for 3 years.
Right. All right. So then,
because they put the two together, I think okay, this is me making presumptions. But for whatever reason, the attorney put the two together. And that created the much more long drawn out thing because now they had to adjudicate two things simultaneously.
okay.
Custody
Mm-hmm.
and divorce. And I was like, okay, I have not done what I've been accused of, and I have a responsibility to be in my kids' lives. So I tried to step up and be very proactive. I was under a microscope every minute of every day. So I tried to be very careful, take notes, keep records, and show judge, what you tell me what to do, I'll do it, and then some, just to show step by step by step. I was very active, very engaged, very consistent. So I think that caused the custody thing to be drawn out extra long, which meant that we didn't actually get to, the divorce wasn't finalized till after custody was largely resolved. And just because of the back and forth, that took a few years.
So you had the validation claim made, and then a 2 year period where you could only see the kids under supervision.
Yeah.
And so then you talked about being able to just have them without being supervised. I'm sure they could stay overnight at that point.
Yep.
That sort of stuff. And so that begins that process of connecting with them. So, knowing a fair amount of your story, I know there's a unique situation as far as the co-parenting during that process. So I guess from picking up from the supervision being dropped and just being able to sort of be quote unquote a normal family, what's the co-parenting look like between you and your wife at the time?
Co-parenting presented a very real challenge. Keeping in mind the devastation and hurt I caused my then wife. Okay. It was and the challenges and the acrimony that had built up over the course of the custody dispute and stuff. Not everybody gets to a place where they can effectively co-parent in a divorce situation. And sometimes you move to a parallel parenting, where just, even if you want it for whatever reason, both parties are just, there's too much pain, there's too much whatever it was. Their co-parenting is just, it's not going to happen. So the next best course at that juncture is parallel parenting, where each parent is trying to do the very best they can for the kids with much less cooperation and communication between the two.
Okay.
So it's doable,
Hmm.
very doable. You know, and it's just it's the reality for probably a lot. You know, divorces aren't easy. They do a lot of damage, and they come after you've done a lot of damage, and I did. So it's not hard to believe that some folks come out of that and they're just like, I cannot co-parent with that other person. There's too much,
Right.
and honestly, I I appreciate that more than I did back then, certainly. That okay, and I'm grateful for the for the parallel parenting that we can manage. You know, we use Family Wizard to communicate. I probably talk more, which everybody knows. I talk a lot. And, she's very gracious and very patient, I'm sure, with that. When she needs to respond, she does, short and sweet. And it's okay. And, you know, she loves our kids more than anything. I love our kids more than anything. And I'm confident we both want what's best for them to the best of our ability. And by God's grace, parallel parenting is something that is working for us, which honestly, co-parenting is the ideal. Well, no,
Hmm.
the intact family is the ideal. Co-parenting after that, obviously, but there's a lot worse than parallel parenting. So, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to her for her patience and the capacity she has to parallel parent. Yeah.
So, what's the relationship been like with each of the kids over the past, what, 7 years?
We've all had to learn new things, me especially. I front loaded early on, especially. I took my responsibilities very seriously, which is good. But then I was like, all the stuff I'm supposed to do as a dad, including like life lessons, you know, I haven't had a chance to do. So my poor kids early on were subject a lot to the, all right, let's sit down and have a talk.
Okay.
And my son is, I mean, he's still a kid, but every once in a while he would say something was like, all right, God's tapping me on the shoulder. He's like, Dad, we only have so much time together. Could we do something besides lectures?
Hmm.
You know? And I'm so glad I listened. Not that they haven't still happened here and there, but it was like, okay. And adjusting myself and going to God and having him say, hey, I've given you your children back. I've restored this to you. You're gonna, to be the dad they need in the moment. You know what he needs, what um, the oldest needs, what the youngest needs, they need you to be there. Hang out with them, spend time with them, do something fun, make dinner, you know, go to the doctors, whatever they need. If a teachable moment comes up, so be it. But stop trying to create them.
Hmm.
you know, um, my oldest had our relationship got a little rocky, kind of in her 16th year, um, and it was an opportunity for me to reflect. Say, okay, all right, what can I do different? Because it got rocky enough where she was like, I think we need a few months apart. And while I didn't understand all the whys or hows, I did understand she feels this way. And I don't necessarily need to understand why, you know? Um, but she kept the door open for an occasional text and eventually an opportunity to go have some coffee together. Um, and, my perspective, what I wanted my perspective to be was, okay, Lord, where can I meet her where she's at in a healthy way, and so that hopefully she wants to remain a part of my life so I can be a part of hers. And he was very faithful to that. A little less condemnation, a little less worrying about her immediate choices, or at least in her face, talking to God about your kids, and lifting
Hmm.
them up and asking him to take care of them. Perfectly fine. But maybe like my tendency to kind of be in her face and say, look, I think you're doing this wrong, less productive.
Right.
And, half the time probably not even right. So stepping back off of that, and she wanted to be a part of my life. And I was like, I don't want to ruin this, Lord, help me not be an idiot. But our relationship has improved tremendously. I get, she's an incredibly capable soul. She's in her third year of college. She took those wings and she flew out of the nest, and she's been very motivated and I'm proud of her. I'm so proud of her because she's making her own way and she's doing it with, she's very intentional about making her own way. And she's an extraordinary soul. And she lets me be a part of her life. I send her a text, tell her I love her, tell her I'm thinking about her and praying for her, talking on the phone sometimes. She's really busy. So, it's like I'll take the time she can, because what they have her doing at school occupies a ton of her time. And then, my son, he's very analytical, very logical. He thinks through everything. He and I can sit down and have conversations and good discussions. He does have a limit with me. I can be overly dramatic, and that's not his. That's not his speed. But I had a wonderful conversation with my younger sister, actually, and I was telling her, I was like, I don't know what to do. I love my son. I feel like I'm losing him. And it was this wonderful, poignant moment where because I was talking about like defensiveness, and she's like, well, she told me, she shared something in her life. She said, I learned this. That someone in my life, she was talking, was reacting to me with defensiveness. So it was like defensiveness begets defensiveness. And it was just a recipe for disaster. And I took that to heart, and I started approaching my son differently as much as possible. And it took a little while, because that's what he was used to, Oh, I'm going to have to defend myself against whatever Dad's saying. But I think we reached a point with some definitely stumbling blocks. I still fall into the old self from time to time, but less and less over time as it went. And then figuring out, like, I've never been much of a music person. I'm sorry. I know. Most people are like, oh no, you've lost out on so much. Yeah, true. My son is. He loves vinyls, right? So it was such a simple adjustment. Hey, bud, why don't we listen to your music? We'd be in the car driving. All right, he'd play his music. I'd ask him questions here and there. Taking an interest in what he was interested in seemed to be something that worked very well in terms of our relationship becoming stronger and healthier. He introduced me to some music, like, oh, that actually was kind of fun. We went and saw a concert in Washington at the beginning of his senior, Washington, D.C., beginning of his senior year, live, which was, it was awesome. And so just taking an interest in his stuff and asking him questions and letting him play his music and let him talk to me about his music. I know more about music now, still no expert, but compared to where I was, like, yeah, I know some hymns,
Right.
Now I actually know like a lot more by comparison. And my relationship with my son, praise God, is healthy and good. And then there's my youngest, born to me, and she has some memories before her mom and I separated, but very few, because she was 2. So this has been her life. So, and now she's she's a 7th grader. Her siblings are both in college. So we've moved into this almost like, she's not an only child, but the way we're living day to day is it's a necessary shift. It's a different change. So she's got a wicked sense of humor, and she directs that at me quite a bit. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I should be upset about this, but that was funny, So, but capturing that, and she loves skincare. So she'll send me like, hey, Dad, here's some gift ideas, and it's like all these major name brands and stuff. I'm like, let me see if I can find something just as reliable that does the same thing for less, you know. But like, so I'll find her, little things here and there. She's got her skincare regimen and stuff. And I'm not really sure where that came from because she's not allowed on social media. She can't wear makeup, all these things that I wouldn't let an 11-year-old do anyway. But yeah, she's like, well, all right. She did say once, well, I don't want to have cracks in my skin like you. One of her funny moments. I was like, all right, that's fair. But no, so she's a sweetheart. She has her moments, like everybody else. She's in that interesting space between younger child and coming on teen. So some days it's my 9. Sometimes she's more like 9 or 10-year-old Naomi. Sometimes she's more like, okay, this is kind of an image of what my teenager will be like, you know. But just being able to try and be there for her, understand where she's coming from. She's my crier. And it's not crocodile tears. She just cries real easy. She's also like, she cannot handle me being disappointed. And never angry. She just can't, It's like, I'm just disappointed is the worst thing I could say to that child. Um, but being there, like, I want to understand her better so I can be the dad she needs, the one she needs for this time, and like being there, like, honey, this is, stop crying. Doesn't work. But like, hey, kiddo. Because I have my moments too. Sometimes, for whatever reason, maybe she's just tearing up for some reason, and I'm in a place where I'm like, ugh, I don't have a capacity right now or whatnot. Lord God, give me the capacity. And also, hey, sweetheart, I understand if you have to cry, you go ahead. All right. I'm going to go over here and make some dinner. I'm going to do some dishes. I'm going to be right over here, still in the same house, right next door. When you're ready, if you need me, I'm here. And if you want to talk, we'll talk, and giving her that space.
Right.
So, she's also so creative. She likes crafts. She likes putting things together. She comes up with a new scheme every 6 months. She was going to sell. She's also entrepreneurial. She was going to sell slime. She made all these slimes, different types. Then she was like, I think I'm going to make jewelry. So we're still in the make jewelry phase, but I think that's, we'll see. And now she's been invited to spend some time in the coming semester when school starts at a friend's house once a week to have fun making little story videos. So, which she's excited to. She loves her friends. She loves engaging with people. She's like, of my 3, she's the one who was most quick to go over and hug somebody. No, honey, we don't hug strangers.
Right.
But no, it's good. I've had a chance to see how each of them is their own person, how each of them has to be parented very differently. Made my mistakes. Fortunately, the oldest was the guinea pig in a lot of ways, Most of the mistakes were made because I didn't know yet, and her brother and sister get the benefit
Right.
of that education. But they are some of the most remarkable people. And then, if I have a chance to share about the other 2 wonderful ladies in my life, my stepdaughters, that also, like, God is just, I think back to a portion in Job where he's saying the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. And there was a moment for me where I realized, yeah, he gives, he takes away. He had to, because I was so stubborn, and he knew the only way I was going to finally listen was if he allowed me to experience the consequences of my choices. But then, in my own way, although most of this is just in terms of relationships, which I've come to value so much more, like, I feel so wealthy because of relationships, that he's given back twice what I felt like I had lost in terms of connections and people.
It's awesome, man. It's a blessing to hear the growth in the relationship with the kids, from where things were to where they're at now. So that's huge. So recovery,
Mm-hmm.
February 2017. We fast forwarded, as far as the relationship with the kids. What does recovery look like from that point to, you know, I guess within the past year?
Okay. So recovery early on, um, every week, consistently as possible. But again, my tendency of getting in my own way, being slow to make the connections, even though everybody was there trying to make the connections. I'm grateful I have them, but I'll see, I'll see some men come in and like right away, okay, and I'd be like too standoffish. Like I wanted to connect with you, but it took me ages, and it wasn't your fault. It was a me issue, right? But going to recovery, learning the steps, sitting through it, hearing from other folks, realizing I was not singularly terrible, that wow, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person who's faced this addiction. I'm not the only person who made that choice. I'm not the only person who's gone through that or that or that. And actually, there are a lot of us, and probably even more outside of those rooms,
Oh yeah.
just in life. That was huge for me because up to that point, beyond any shadow of a doubt, I was right up there. But worse, I was like, Paul said he was the worst of the worst. I've got him beat, you know? Like nobody's been like, look what I did to my family. Look at what I did to my wife. Look at, what's happened because of, you know, um, and ironically living in shame and guilt, which is terribly cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
It brings you right back to the same problem. But it was good. It taught me, I learned what it meant to be a love cripple, and my eyes began to open up in regards to that. And I suddenly discovered, like, I had no idea that for 24 years I had been stunting my emotions. And it's difficult to put into words, but between the process of leaning into God and that time of loss and then recovery, I had a lot of catching up to do. I was like an adolescent emotionally, I had a lot of catching up to do in terms of understanding and managing emotion. I was all over the place, you know. Um, it was, manic's the wrong word, but it's the only one I can think of in terms of the emotional kind of tsunamis, So I hadn't developed the tools or the muscles to handle grief well, to handle anger well, to handle love well, you know. I'm still looking through glass darkly when it comes to love. But back then, I might as well have been trying to peer through concrete. I really was, in every sense of the word, a genuine love cripple. I did not understand it. I didn't know how to give it. I didn't know how to receive it. And that was no one else's fault but my own. The kid's mom, she 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 was a beautiful person in that regard, and she tried very hard for a very long time and she was a great example of that, through a lot of, so it was a reckoning for me, but it was a good reckoning. It was like, like after you've exercised for a while, it's a good hurt.
So when you get into recovery, then is it you enter in? Is it rough patches in the beginning, ups and downs, or was it you hit it and you were just on fire all the way through?
So I can't say I was on fire. I will say it was a constant smolder. I had a lot of obligations and responsibilities that meant I couldn't make every meeting, especially after the first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So my time in became every other, and and then there were times in and out. I also went to a couple of other recoveries that were closer at times on other nights.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell myself the lie of, well, I live a half hour from recovery, instead of going.
Mm-hmm.
God was good and faithful, and I remained sober. But my road through recovery as being in the rooms, again, all me, was more of a consistent but slow burn than a raging fire.
Okay.
One of the reasons why I was waiting for a week when you would say, anybody want to be a sponsor? And you raised your hand. Because for whatever reason, I had locked onto you. So I took that opportunity because it was me trying to deal with knowing who I was in my flesh. I'm going to try and find a way around if I can. So I'm gonna force myself into a system of accountability, and he's gonna come at me and he's gonna say, okay, here's what you're gonna do, and he's not gonna mince words. And if I don't do it, he'll be like, all right, well, it was nice knowing you, right? So I needed that though. I it's like there's certain I know there's certain character traits about me I don't like,
Mm-hmm.
and that is one of mine. If I can find an easier route, or a route that's a little less confrontational or a little easier in the moment, I'm far too inclined to take the wide road instead of the narrow one. So I try to set myself up in, now someone's there, for lack of a better way to put it, with an expectation, and I don't want to, and so now I've got something to be accountable to. I need to make sure I do this. So that is definitely one of my many faults.
Well, that's all part of step 6 and 7.
But it's yeah. I live in 6 and 7. They are my friends. No, I'm very grateful for how the steps are constructed, because I have to do a lot of time in those steps.
So the divorce is finalized in 2020. You said,
yes.
Let's say was the summer of 2020.
No. January 6th.
January. Oh, that's right, January 6th, the beginning of 2020. So, what does it look like as far as how much time passes? Where do you feel led to? Where's the comfort in, potentially even thinking about, should I start dating?
I didn't consider it or think about it until it was done, and I wanted to purpose to bring it to God very deliberately, like, Lord, if this isn't for me, if you're saying I shouldn't be, I wanted to be. I wanted His blessing, do I have I asked myself the question, do I even have a right, biblically? And I sought out input and thoughts from men I trust, men of God, to get their feelings and talking to God directly. I didn't like being alone, so I decided to go ahead and begin dating fairly
When
quickly.
was this?
Probably early February 2020.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Now, from my perspective, was it has been 3 years. Reconciliation was not an option. I'd like to see. I'd like to find out. And so I went on to like Christian Mingle and signed up for a month or two. And, and it's tried to look for ladies who I hope would be where I would not be unequally yoked.
Mm-hmm.
And, there'd be conversations with some, and, understandably, well, why are you divorced? Yeah. And, quite a few would be like, okay, well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, right? Once they'd understand why. Um, and there were a few ladies here and there who I'd talked to. I went on a couple of dates. Um, there were, and they weren't. It was like, this has been very nice. It's been very nice to meet you. You know, and most with those, it was typically just a mutual, like, okay, it was a nice dinner, and I wish you well. Um, there was, I stopped using Mingle. There was this tiny little site called Christian Crush. It was $15 a month. I was like, that's cheaper. I can do that. They had a very, very thorough, like, psych eval thing part that really, really tried to nail down, like, okay, where do you stand in your relationship with Christ? I think the goal it was to work hard, not to have anybody who would be unequally yoked to someone else. Unequally yoked meaning like so different in belief systems that it wouldn't be a wise combination. And I searched out, and it's a very niche site, so there weren't a lot of people on it. A few 100 miles, no hits. A few hundred more, oh look, there's a soul, And finally, it was just like, oh, why not? Um, uh, let's just say continental U.S., right?
Oh, okay.
Right.
Open it
And
up.
this person popped up, and I was reading through her bio. And I'm like, oh, okay. She's been to a Christian camp when a teenager. So I wrote to her, it's like, hey, I went to a Christian camp when I was a teen too, and here's what we did, and it was fun. Have a good day, And a couple weeks later, so this is probably mid-February, she writes back. She's, oh, I was just hopping on to cancel my subscription, and I saw you wrote me. Right. So so she's like, hey, my name's, and we started chatting a little bit there, and she's like, well, how do you feel about a phone call? Sure. So we started talking on the phone. She shared that we began to talk. And one of the reasons why I had stepped away from Mingle as well as, and this was for me, especially with what had happened, with what I had done with my recovery and who I wanted to be as a person. There were a lot of wonderful souls on there who were dating while separated.
Mm.
And again, this is just for me.
Right.
I didn't want to potentially try to connect with someone where there might even be a hair's breadth chance of reconciliation while they were still married.
Right.
So, so when I met this person, believe it or not, they'd been at this much longer. They were still technically separated. It was a similar situation to mine, but it had gone on even longer. And the papers for the dissolution had been in the other party's hands for a long time. But she was very gracious. Said I could really come to like you. This is just my personal perspective. So, if when it's done, if you're still interested, give me a call.
Okay.
So I guess I don't know. I don't know how it worked out, because from my initial conversations with her, it sounded like it could take a lot longer. So it's like, well, that was nice. She was a nice person. And then a few weeks later, hi, I just wanted to let you know that we did move forward. He did do this. And again, every family's circumstances are very unique, very different. I said, okay. So we started talking on the phone. And I'd give her a call or she'd give me a call. Then the pandemic hit, you know. So we're both stuck at home doing our work. So we would just put up our phones with the video camera and talk. And we talked for hours and hours. Over the course of a few months, we probably talked for hundreds.
Wow.
That's not, learning about each other, talking to each other. And, and I was like, okay, Lord, I absolutely could fall for this lady. Checking in with him. And I said, I think I'm more than just liking her. And I didn't feel like he was saying no. So I said, okay. And I knew she was in Washington. So this was kind of crazy, right? Like 2,500 miles away, Jason, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. But, God seems to be opening doors. One of the wonderful things is early on, because I told her, I said, okay, there's something in my life that I'm going to need to tell you if we go further. Would you mind if we spent just a couple more weeks getting to know each other first? And she said, sure. She was the first one. Everybody else wanted to know right out of the gate.
Okay.
And she called me on a Sunday, and she had her own thing, which was wild. It revolved around something that had been completely out of her control. She had no fault in whatsoever, but she was afraid that would mean I wouldn't want to be with her. And I was like, I was able to share with her, but that also, I was like, okay, here's what, I've told you there was an addiction in my life. Here's what it is. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my sobriety, and being active. She says, okay, as long, she says, if you've changed, if you're active in your recovery and you're remaining sober, then I'd like to give this a try. So pandemic began. We spent a lot of time talking together, and I'm in my 40s. I'm like, okay, I actually did a little bit of dating there. That really wasn't for me. I wanted to find if there was someone that God was going to have in my life that I could be with, I really wanted to connect well. And he seemed to be opening doors with her. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to act like I was when I was 22. I'm going to pursue her. And so I did. And she came for a visit in late July of 2020. That was, I think we both breathed a sigh of relief, because up to that point, this could have been the most epic catfish ever, right? But we were both real. So, I drove her to a hotel. She got unpacked. We went out for dinner, and she was there for a week. And I'd take her to Gettysburg or to Lancaster, down to Rehoboth for a day. And I'd pursued her wholeheartedly, absolutely fallen for her. And I'd picked up a ring. And I gave it to her towards the end of that trip. And again, everybody's journey is different. Nobody should look at my journey and say, oh, I should do that too. It's in God's hands and by his time. And I'd also I was committing to her, but I'd also talk to God, and I'd come to the realization I really wanted to be with her the rest of my life. And if it meant we couldn't be together for 10 years because she had obligations on the West Coast, so be it. And it was real. I was like, holy moly. I mean that, which was like, wow, I'm being serious. And I was trying to be cautious and stuff. And my daddy was ill at the time. He had a very, very lethal blood cancer. And he hadn't had a chance to be a part of the first time when I had married my first wife. And he was obviously, miracles are on the table. God, whatever he wants to do. God healed my father eventually by bringing him home, But we had that, and I kept bringing up challenges like, all right, Lord, what about this? What about that? And I could see God saying, well, okay, here's the door. It's open. Go ahead and walk through it. All right, I'll try the next one. Well, if this one doesn't open, okay, then it's a 10-year wait. Nope, that would open too. So he opened up the doors for us to go ahead and make the commitment of marriage in July of 2021.
Okay.
My dad he officiated. My wife's brother, who's also a minister, took part in that. So we had just our families. There were just 40 people there.
Mm-hmm.
Just our families came, but they all they drove over from Washington.
Wow.
Yeah, they're an awesome family. Um, and and to be able to stand there before God in front of that beautiful woman, to recognize I do not deserve her, and to realize too, like, okay, if I had told God, like, okay, Lord, here's the list of things I want, she is so much more
Mm.
than my wildest dreams of the person I wanted in my life. It's like God was like, no, I know who you need, and he brought her there. And so having the opportunity to, and taking the lessons learned from the mistakes, the failures and say, okay, I saw how this hurt my children's mom. I'm not going to do that here. I was not a covering here. I want to be a covering here. I did not engage in consistent, regular prayer for her, for my family, or together. We're going to do that here. And seeing God's blessing, because we're in a unique circumstance where, my beautiful stepdaughters have a daddy over there, right? And I, especially considering what I felt I had experienced as a father, I do not want to be in the business of taking anybody from their
Right.
daddies. So, so that was like, my wife knew that from the get go. I'm not going to be a party to taking the girls away from their dad, which was like, yeah, we shouldn't be,
Mm-hmm.
right? She was, full agreement with that, which again, another open door. Um, so right now I'm here and on the East Coast, she's there on the West Coast, and we come together as often as we can, as often as finances will permit. It's a very unique circumstance. God is in the details, and he's allowing it to work. And I'm so grateful to him for that. Again, like I have the opportunity because of the circumstances, again, very unique. I'm not in the lives of my stepdaughters the way a father and mother might be in a typical blended family.
Mm-hmm.
But these wonderful young ladies allow me to send them a text, share with them, build them up, love on them, be whatever I can be under these unique circumstances, just to be a friend, Again, and not replacing dad, not even a thought of that. Just grateful that, hey, I I always wanted 5 kids. So I don't, so, but, and, the oldest, she's an incredibly intelligent person, very, very type A, very capable. Oh man, I mean, her intelligence just blows me out of the water. She's so capable. She's married to a wonderful young man. You know, I'm I've had a chance and continue to have a chance to see their marriage grow. They're 2 years now, you know, and and she allows me to be a little part of her life, and I'm so grateful for that. She's a ray of sunshine for me. And then the younger one, she is like, both girls are athletes in their own right. The oldest plays rugby, and she's like right up front at the tackle area. I do not know all the words for it. She's tried to teach me. Um, the other one, just as much an athlete, works so hard at batting. She plays softball. She's gotten so good, and she's a thinker, and she's good at puzzles. Like we did a one of those escape rooms once, and my wife and I are sitting there saying, and her, my youngest stepdaughter looks at it. She's like, oh, you know, and out drops the key. So, she's, and they're like the oldest one, she's more outspoken. She's more willing to say, this is exactly what's on my mind. The youngest one, she keeps her thoughts to herself, perhaps a little bit more, but she's such an extraordinary young lady. Like, she's just beautiful inside and out. She's a godly young lady. I see her. She goes very intentionally to youth group and church, and keeps her relationship with God strong and healthy. And like I said, my cup's overflowing. I'm so blessed beyond measure.
That's awesome, man. It definitely feels that way from your whole explanation of the blessing of connecting with your kids through all the turmoil that happened in the first marriage, and then just where God led you in connecting with your now wife, and so I'm doing the math right. You guys just celebrated 5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that's awesome, and so this is one of the times of the year where you guys are able to be together. So it's so I want to thank her for allowing you had the time to come and spend and tell your story. So that's a blessing in its own right, and I'm grateful to her to give up some of that precious time that you guys have, since you aren't able to be together all the time. So yeah, and it is a unique situation, and all marriages are unique in their own right. They all have different ways, and yet this is probably something new that most people probably haven't encountered, as far as this type of an arrangement, if you will, and yet it works for you guys, and so that's really all that matters. It really doesn't matter whether people think about it and whether or not they could do it or can't do it. It's what is working for you too. So God is in it and about it, and he's guiding you guys through this. So it's a beautiful thing to see.
There are areas where I'm not so strong where she is, and hopefully vice versa.
I'm sure.
And she was the first person to ever say she liked my dimples. I didn't even know I had dimples. I guess I smile a lot around her. And she is every bit a woman of wisdom and giving. She takes care of her family. She's a teacher by trade, so she's got a lot of kids she's consistently investing in, which is why we usually have a chance to be together in the summer. She tends to bring what I lack. I can often view the whole forest and miss trees. And Melissa's very good at saying, hey, honey, there's a tree here. We should probably pay attention to that. She's remarkable. Like, if you need anything researched, she'll find it inside of 10 minutes. I could probably find the same thing. It'll take me hours. I don't know. She's got a gift for it. She's been many things in her past, including a journalist. So she has a knack for digging in and finding things, which is really like, if we need something, like, all right, here's what we're thinking. Who will be able to find out about this? Ask Melissa. She's my honeybee. And she's a remarkable soul. I found my smile with her. I don't know if probably not earlier, but I look at pictures during the time of my life, which was blessed and appreciated, because I had so stunted my emotions. even when I was happy and even when I felt love, if you see photos, you'd be like saying, is he okay? It's like he doesn't know how to smile. You know, and God has, in healing me and restoring me and in my recovery and getting, I'm still behind the 8 ball, but getting a better grasp of the emotions that I had stunted for so long. He taught me how to smile more, and it's a lot of fun. I definitely prefer it. Yeah, you get more smiles from other people when you can smile at them. And, so when my wife sits there and says, hey, handsome, oh, it makes my day.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And she puts up with a lot. I talk a lot. And sometimes, she's pretty good about letting me see when I've perhaps hit hit her limit. So then I'm like, all right, I got to back off a little. But she's very patient, and she's wonderful. She overlooks the small things, in the sense that, like, the stuff you learn to get used to. Like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to make a big deal out of the way they put the toilet paper or the way they roll the toothpaste, and you start with those small things because then it can grow a little bit, okay, So he didn't put the dish back exactly where where I prefer it, or you know what? From she needs quiet right now, and I could stand to learn how to be quiet, and finding the areas where I can give to her, and say it's such a small ask. She's not even asking, but if it can be a blessing to her, if not making a big deal out of something that on an eternal scale isn't worth it. On the other hand, at one point, this was a few years back, she had to say, hey, honey, took me aside very lovingly, very capable. The way you're approaching a certain topic when we talk about it, it's, it was stressing her out. It was causing her soul to be restless.
Okay.
She handled that so well and taught me some stuff in the process. So that's how we could go about this. But just the way she was able to approach it in love, but taking care of herself. Like, okay, Jason, you're a bit much, and it's making my own, me inside. It's not nice.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, babe, but giving me the chance to reset that and apologize, make it right. This might sound a little funny rather, but also learning how to fight well. What do I mean by that? Okay. The first time around, we studiously avoided it.
First time around, you mean with the
I'm sorry,
first
wife?
Yes. Okay.
With my first wife, we never argued. So when things started to get bad, we had no skills. So the eruptions were really, really bad because we didn't know how. We'd avoided it at all costs for 16 years. So Melissa and I'm learning that and again, with that example earlier, if there is something I want to talk to her about, there's a healthy way to approach it, that isn't a broadside, and learning how to disagree in a way that is not harmful to our relationship, So when I say fight, not like, a fight, but just like, okay, we're kind of on each other's nerves right now, And all right, let's be fair. I'm probably on hers. It's usually
just
one-sided.
a healthy way of being able to communicate your feelings.
Yes.
Instead of
So,
just bottling them up or pushing them down, and eventually they're going to erupt in a very, very unhealthy way.
and we're still working on it. It's probably a lifelong thing,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, but but it's of course in the moment it's never comfortable, but getting to a place of like, okay, we're going to talk it out, and she'll let me know too. Not right now. All right. Yeah. So me, of course, no, I want to fix it now.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I need a little bit of time. um, but me learning to be okay, I can back off for a bit. It's going to be all right. It doesn't have to be fixed right this moment. She knows I love her, and we'll figure it out, you know. And we do, and we have some tough conversations, and we do it with love, and and making up is awesome, and just having the opportunity, like, one thing I hadn't learned to do well either was learn how, with my first wife, was when I was in the wrong, admit it,
Mm-hmm.
and genuinely turn to work on not doing it again, especially with that corruption that was in there,
Mm-hmm.
with my addiction the whole time. With Melissa, the opportunity to, okay, step back. What can I do? Like, maybe I have something I really want to get off my chest as well. But first and foremost, for me, what can I do to not be a stumbling block or place a burden on her in the process? And, after a little introspection, I can always find something I should probably apologize for, you know. But and being able to do that, baby, this is what I did, and that wasn't okay, and I'm so sorry. And then bringing that to God and watching as God, it's all new to me because this is something I didn't understand as a seminary graduate and a Christian and all these things, all the head knowledge and not a bit of experience. So a lot of this is still wonderfully new to me. I know we're 5 years in, but we see each other 4 or 5 times a year.
Right.
So, and we see each other, no buts, and we see each other. It's new, and I'm enjoying it because he's teaching me. I think in my earnest desire to be a husband and a man after his own heart, and he's teaching me, and I want so much to get out of my own way, let go of that pride, let go of that stubbornness, and just say, "Oh, okay, Lord," And I'm so grateful that he's so patient as a potter, and he's still working on me
Well, I think we've covered
quite a
your
bit.
whole life, up to present. Is but give you the opportunity if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about, or any sort of parting shots of wisdom or anything. Now's the
Um,
time.
God is faithful. He is my higher power. I don't want to mince words on that. And I'm grateful for the 12 steps. And I'm grateful that for those people who don't yet know Christ, that they're able to find something they can consider a higher power to help them out. But at the end of the day, I was in so much bondage in my sin, in that addiction. And I am so free now with surrender. And it is the most wonderful paradox that exists. Surrendering to my Creator equals freedom. And that doesn't seem to make sense, right? Surrender means you give up. Now you're in chains with someone else. No. Surrendering to God, letting Him be in control, giving up my right to do what I want or to be right or whatever I think is right, and actually saying, all right, Lord, you take the wheel. Sorry. Song reference. You take the reins and I will trust you with this step. And I'll trust you with that step. And this is scaring me and it is not comfortable, but here we go. Here's another. And 10 years later, I see where I was in a million pieces and couldn't fathom ever being put back together. There's no other way to put it. I know it sounds like a caricature, but there was a point where I very, very genuinely felt like I was in so many pieces, there's no way I could be put back together. And yet he did. And I can look back now and I see his presence in the worst of the pain and the worst of the sorrow. He's given me outlets. It's a shame that it happens in heightened emotional moments, but he's given me a lot of poetry that he's allowed me to write that expresses my journey from those darkest moments to now and hope. He's given me men in my life who I count as friends and brothers, which is so healthy. This, he's given me purpose as a father and a husband, but that's no longer what defines me. I get to be defined as I have a relationship with the Most High God, and he considers me a son.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, in all this life, in all of eternity, that's enough. Being able to be face to face with him someday, and if he'll permit, just to fall at his feet and weep with joy and be so thankful. And, maybe give him a hug if he'll allow it. Just to, he rescued me. He rescued me from myself. He rescued me from destruction. He's restored me. He's reconciled me to my children. He brought the most amazing soul into my life to be my partner. He brought two beautiful young ladies into my life that I get to speak to and be a part of in some small way. He's given me you and so many others. He's given me joy. Yeah, it's not every day is happy. No, I didn't wake up very happy this morning. I just wasn't feeling well. But there's joy. And that was one of the things, especially early on, that really mattered to me. I was going to be okay, not because I was okay, but because he had me.
Mm-hmm.
I was very much not okay. But I was secure and I was safe because he was there with me. So if anybody could receive anything from me in that regard, don't rule out a God. Don't rule out the God. Don't rule out Christ. Give him a chance. He's patient. He can handle your doubts. He can handle your struggles. He made us who we are. He wants a relationship with us. He doesn't want robots. He wants you to choose him. So he can handle that. He's not going to be he's not going to be downtrodden or put out because you have doubts about it or concerns. If you seek the truth will lead you to him always. And there will be hope even in the midst of great turmoil and a sense of peace that you will not be able to explain that includes this joy. And I know they can be used synonymously, joy and happy. For me, they are distinct. Sitting here and talking to you has made me very happy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great. If I go home and stub my toe, I'm not going to be so happy. But joy is so much more than that. It's the knowledge that I have hope. What do I have hope for? That this isn't all there is. That despite being who I was and doing the damage I did and hurting and harming my first wife and all the chaos and brokenness that created for the rest of the family and my children, it was not so bad and so terrible and so awful that he was finally like, oh, that's the limit. Sorry. Don't want you anymore. He pursued me. I mentioned earlier pursuing my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to come to the realization he was pursuing me for 40 years. Through all of those 24 years, I could tell you countless times now looking back where he was like, hey, here's an opportunity to get off this crazy train, And because he's wonderful, he allowed me to experience what for me was certainly hell on earth, of my own making.
Right.
Right. But, because I'm so stubborn, that's what it took. And I'm so glad he did it. I don't know. So if anybody can take anything from me, in your darkest, lowest possible moment, when you're at the bottom and you can't go any further down, there's no other options, you've got no other escapes, no other choices, nothing. And all you can do is look up. Look for him. He'll be there. He'll be ready. He's always been ready. He's always been there. But when you're ready, give him a chance. You'll never regret it. I don't know. That's all I can share. That's all I've got. Is just like, he's worth it.
He is. Christ is King.
Amen. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for doing this, and prayers that it helps somebody out there. So,
Amen. Lord
all right,
willing.
brother. Good spending time with you.
Likewise.